They called it the Universal Accord Summit, a last-ditch attempt to prevent full-scale war between the species of the Orion branch. The diplomats had been rehearsing their speeches for months, dressing them in soft words and hollow promises. I was there, standing behind glass and steel aboard the Helix Prime, Earth's flagship. I wasn't a diplomat. I didn't come to talk. I came to make sure no one left that room thinking humanity was weak. They told us the other species had evolved beyond war, that they saw conflict as primitive, beneath them, and they looked at us the same way they looked at a wild dog wandering into a palace. Dangerous. Dirty, disposable. But it wasn't Earth that started this. We didn't pick the fight. They did. We sent colony ships through the Reach, uncharted space, barren and forgotten. We planted flags in the dust, built domes in silence, and tried to stay out of their galactic mess. But that wasn't enough. 3 human settlements were vaporized, no warning, no explanation, just ashes and orbiting bones. So when they sent the invitation to this so-called Peace Summit, the United Terran Command didn't send envoys. We sent fleets. 32 warships moved in silence through the black, slipping past their early warning systems like ghosts. Stealth plating, quantum dampeners, hidden guns. We didn't tell anyone we were coming loaded. I stood on the command deck, watching the capital planet of Arenthus rotate slowly beneath us, green, bloated, and full of hypocrites. "Orbit secure," said Commander Hale beside me. His voice was cold, military sharp. "Our birds are in geosynchronous position. They still haven't detected us." "Good," I said. "Keep the missiles locked, but powered." We weren't here for a fair fight. We were here to send a message. They wanted peace because they were afraid. Not of war, of us. They'd underestimated what desperation could do to a species that crawled from caves to space in just a few thousand years. They called us violent by nature, and maybe they were right. But it was their fire that lit this powder keg. On the planet below, the summit hall was surrounded by ivory towers, polished spires, and blue banners that fluttered like hope. Inside, Earth's representative, a man named Draven, stood alone on the marble stage, facing 30 alien delegates. His smile was tight, calculated, and fake. He wasn't there to negotiate. He was the decoy. The council chamber was designed to suppress weapons. Even body heat signatures were scanned. He wasn't armed, but he didn't need to be. I tapped into his comm line. "Draven, how's the room?" I asked. "Full of liars," he said, "and they think I don't know. Time to give them a reason to remember who they're dealing with." Draven adjusted his collar and stepped forward. "Our people came here in good faith," he began, voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. "We hoped for accountability, for justice. We hoped to find allies among you." The Valeri Chancellor snorted, his slick mandibles clicking in contempt. "Your kind is unstable, aggressive. We destroyed your colonies because they were encroaching. We expected you'd understand your place." Draven nodded slowly, then smiled. "We do," he said, "and we came here to show you what happens when you mistake our silence for fear." That was the cue. I turned to Commander Hale. "Drop the cloak, light up the sky." Within seconds, our fleet shimmered into existence in orbit above Arenthus, like monsters stepping from shadows. 32 Earth warships, each bristling with cannons, railguns, kinetic launchers, and atmospheric disruptors. Every planetary defense satellite blinked red in terror. A hush fell over the summit. Even through our visuals, you could see the fear ripple through them like a shockwave. Some delegates stood, others shouted into their comms. Too late. Draven stepped off the podium and spoke the words that changed everything. Humanity came with open hands, but we also came with loaded barrels. Pick which one you want. I looked out the viewport. The spires of the capital city looked small now, breakable. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy realized Earth didn't need peace to survive. We needed revenge, and we were just getting started. The silence didn't last long. Within seconds of our fleet uncloaking, alarms screamed across Arenthus. Their early warning system had finally caught up, but it was too late. We were already in position, above every capital building, over every military installation. Targeting data flowed like water through our HUDs, painting red on the most important pieces of their planetary infrastructure. And they knew it. From the bridge of the Helix Prime, I watched chaos unfold on a dozen screens. Diplomatic vessels scrambled to escape orbit. Defense arrays started spinning up, desperate to take aim at us. The planetary defense net tried to lock us down with brute force, and we just sat there. Weapons armed. Shields humming. Not firing. Not yet. Let them sweat. Commander Hale stepped beside me. Admiral, Valeri warships are moving into position. 17 of them. They're broadcasting a demand. Put it on screen. The central display shimmered, showing the twisted, insectoid face of High Marshal Thranzik, the head of the Valari Armada, and a cold-blooded butcher known across 3 systems. His yellow compound eyes narrowed. "Human!" he hissed. "Withdraw your fleet immediately! This act of aggression violates galactic law!" I almost laughed. Galactic law, the same law that turned a blind eye when our colonies were wiped off the map. The same law that called for sanctions when we tried to defend ourselves. Funny how they only remembered the rules when we were the ones with power. I leaned forward. "You've already violated every law that matters, Thranzik. This isn't aggression. It's the final warning. You threaten us in our own skies? No. I'm giving you a choice. We didn't come here to negotiate anymore. We came to settle a debt." His image flickered off. That told me all I needed to know. Their pride wouldn't let them back down. That was fine. Pride was flammable. I turned to Hale. "Any movement in the summit hall?" "Some of them are trying to leave. Security's locking the building down. They're scared. Really scared." "Good. Let them be." On the surface, inside the summit chamber, Draven remained calm. His job wasn't over yet. The council had descended into panic, angry shouting in 12 languages, delegates demanding safe passage, blaming each other, pretending this wasn't their fault. Draven stood in the center like a statue, hands behind his back, watching them unravel. Finally, the Ternathi Prime Minister, an avian with a voice like a wind chime, stepped forward. "This is an act of war, Draven. You've turned a peace summit into a battlefield." Draven tilted his head. "Didn't you already do that when you bombed our civilians into dust? You were trespassing in sovereign space." "They were farmers," he said. "Children, engineers. They built homes in the void where no one else dared to, and your kind burned them like weeds." The minister flinched but said nothing. Not a single alien delegate defended the attack. None of them ever had. It wasn't because they agreed with it. It was because it was convenient to let it happen. They feared human expansion more than they cared about human lives. Draven stepped forward. "The era of Earth asking for permission is over. You didn't want to share the stars." "That's fine. Now we'll take what we're owed." One of the reptilian delegates hissed. "And what exactly do you think you're owed, human?" He smiled, calm and unblinking. "Fear. That's the only language you ever listened to." The chamber erupted again, but this time it was desperation, not arrogance. The facade was cracking. Back on the Helix, we were watching every second. The entire summit was under surveillance. Our agents had installed nanocams in every corner before the talks even began. The feed was being broadcast live, to Earth, to the colonies, to every human who ever felt powerless beneath the boot of alien control. Now they were watching us stand tall. Hale turned to me again. "Valeri fleet has powered weapons. They're charging their ion cannons." I nodded. "Hold formation. If they fire, we erase them." He hesitated. "Sir, if we light them up, the war becomes official." "Official?" I barked a laugh. "Hale, the war started the moment they turned our children into ash." A tense pause stretched across the bridge. Officers watched me like they were bracing for the first shot. And they got it. A red warning flashed across the tactical display. "Incoming fire." "They fired a warning shot across the Atlas," Hale shouted. "Minimal damage. Shields held." I exhaled slowly. That was a mistake. "Target the Valeri command ship," I ordered. "Just the flagship. No warnings." "Confirm kill order?" "Confirm it." Seconds later, the Helix Prime's central cannon roared to life. A kinetic projectile the size of a freight train hurled through the void at a fraction below light speed. The Valeri command ship barely had time to scream before it disintegrated, ripped in half in complete silence. On the summit floor, a deep vibration rocked the marble. Glass shattered. The delegates looked up as a deep tremor shook the heavens above them. Draven didn't flinch. He raised a hand to his earpiece and said just one word: "Confirmed." Now they understood. This wasn't diplomacy, it was domination, and they weren't in control anymore. The remaining Valeri warships scrambled, some fled. Others started charging their weapons again, but it was chaos now. They hadn't expected Earth to bite back. They thought they could keep us in a cage built with treaties and empty threats. But we'd brought sledgehammers. A dozen human ships flared to life and began locking targets. We didn't hit civilians. We didn't carpet bomb cities. That wasn't the point. We surgically dismantled every military installation that pointed a weapon toward the stars. We erased their orbital command stations, knocked out power grids to their defense networks, and severed their comm links before they could call for backup. And still, we hadn't fired on the capital. Not yet. "Draven," I said through the comms. "Time to give them their terms." He stepped up again, voice like iron. "Listen carefully. Earth doesn't want a seat at your table anymore. We're flipping the table over." "You can't do this," a diplomat whimpered. "The rest of the council—" "You already did it," Draven cut in. "You started the fire. Now burn with it or stand down." One by one, delegates began backing down. First the ones from the weaker systems, then the outer rim species. Only a few stubborn empires still stood tall. Valeri, Ternathi, Solari, the usual ones. Proud, cruel, broken. Hale looked at me. "What now?" "Now we give them a choice, just like we said." We opened a transmission to every major planetary government across the sector. A single message, repeated in every known language: "Earth will no longer bow. Surrender your weapons aimed at humanity. Dismantle your military infrastructure targeting human systems. Or we will dismantle it for you." And we gave them 30 minutes. What followed was a countdown soaked in sweat and silence. Ships didn't move. Missiles didn't launch. Just quiet tension across the stars. Then, one by one, signals started to pour in. Ceasefires, system-wide shutdowns, retreat orders. Some called it surrender. Others called it survival. We didn't care what they called it. We only cared that they knew. The age of human silence was over. And still we didn't leave. We held position in orbit for 12 more hours. Our ships patrolled the skies like wolves, not firing, not demanding, just watching. Reminding them that Earth wasn't some backwater rock full of primitives anymore. We were a force now. By the end of the day, half the galaxy was on its knees, and the other half was scrambling to decide if it should resist or negotiate. Hale stepped beside me as I looked down at Arenthus one last time. "Think they got the message?" I gave a cold smile. No, not yet. Then what now? I nodded towards the council chamber. They still think we're here for a quick strike. They don't understand that we're staying, that this is the new normal. He nodded back. Occupation? Reckoning. I turned and walked off the bridge, the weight of what we'd done pressing down on me like gravity. Not regret, not shame, responsibility. We'd shown the galaxy what happens when you back a wild animal into a corner. You don't get submission, you get a predator. And Earth was just beginning to hunt. We didn't expect applause when we burned their command ships. We didn't want medals when the Ternathi surrendered their orbital weapons. We weren't there for recognition, or peace treaties, or some shallow place in their broken galactic council. We were there to remind them of the mistake. Because every bone buried in the dust of a forgotten colony, every child whose heartbeat was erased from existence by an alien targeting system, every family who begged for help only to hear silence in return. They were watching now. From Earth, from Luna, from Titan, from the edges of colonized space where humans still clung to the void with bloodied hands. And I would not let their screams be forgotten. But victory always has a price. The day after the summit collapsed, I met with the rest of the High Command aboard the Helix Prime. The war room was a steel box lined with tactical hollows, displaying the Arenthus system in brutal red overlays. Commander Hale stood at my right, eyes flicking over fleet readouts. General Thorne, head of Terran ground forces, stood to my left, arms crossed, battle-hardened jaw clenched like stone. She didn't speak often, but when she did, people listened. The rest of the officers were silent, waiting. Status? I asked, my voice low. 17 systems have agreed to immediate disarmament, Hale said. 9 more are requesting negotiation terms. The rest haven't responded or are presumed mobilizing. Thorne glanced up. The Valeri fleets are regrouping at Tarsus Junction. That's not retreat. That's preparation. I nodded. They want round 2. They're not the only ones, Hale added grimly. Sir, we've intercepted something. Earth Command wanted to bring it to you directly. He handed me a tablet. I scanned it once, then twice. My jaw locked. The transmission was encrypted, but Terran intelligence broke it. The source was deep within our own High Council. Someone back on Earth. A leak. A betrayal. The message had been sent to the Ternathi High Nest 2 days before the summit, outlining our likely orbital tactics, stealth protocols, and a list of potential ship names that would be deployed. Someone sold us out, and the bastards still lost. Thorne's eyes narrowed as she read over my shoulder. You think it's political? It always is, I muttered. Some backroom rat with a title and a fat checkbook who thought if they handed us over, they'd get to sit at the table with the aliens, eat their scraps, be called civilized. You want me to dig? She asked. I looked at her, and for the first time in days, I let the mask crack just enough. No, I want you to find them, and bury them. She gave a tight nod. Done. The problem wasn't just the enemy out there. It was the one behind you, the one shaking your hand while holding a dagger behind their back. Earth's greatest threat wasn't the galaxy. It was our own hunger for approval. They'd called us savages, and some of our own wanted so badly to be seen as anything but that, they were willing to sell their blood for permission slips. I turned back to the holomap. What's the state of Arenthus? Hale flipped a switch and brought up a detailed scan of the capital. Civil unrest, blackouts in the lower districts. Their military hasn't fully stood down. They're still hiding anti-air batteries in the oceans and remote provinces. Propaganda channels are spinning us as terrorists. And there's chatter about a resistance. Of course there was. Even after getting their fleets turned into glowing dust, they couldn't just admit they lost. They needed to paint us as monsters, to frame our justice as brutality. Fine, let them. We weren't there to be loved. We were there to be remembered. They want to provoke us into overstepping, I said. They want civilian casualties so they can rally the neutral systems against us. Should we send in the boots? Thorne asked. Lock the capital down? Not yet. Let them see the orbit full of warships before they see soldiers in their streets. Let fear do half the work. Psychological warfare, Hale said. No, I corrected him. Psychological clarity. They need to understand who holds the leash now. A silent moment passed. Then I added, but tell the fleet, if a single shot comes from that surface, we don't send ground troops. We glass their command structure. No speeches, no warnings. Hale nodded grimly. We'd waited too long to strike. We wouldn't wait again. But in the quiet of that war room, another thought clawed at the back of my mind. Who sent the leak, and why? It wasn't just cowardice. It was coordinated. Someone wanted us to fail, not just the aliens. Someone human. I needed answers, and I knew where to start. 6 hours later, I walked into the secure interrogation chamber below the Helix's core. A dull hum echoed through the walls, the artificial gravity slightly heavier here. A psychological tactic. Make the traitors sweat more. Sitting across from me, bound in reinforced cuffs, was Counselor Rennick. Slim. Slick hair, clean suit that still smelled like earth perfume. He looked like a man who'd never seen a battlefield, but made a career deciding who died on one. You shouldn't be here, he said immediately. This is beneath your rank. I stared at him for a long moment, then walked over to the chair opposite him. Sat down. No. What was beneath my rank was burying entire colonies full of families while you sold us off for political favors. I don't know what you're talking about. I dropped the tablet in front of him. His own coded signature lit up the corner of the intercepted message. His face twitched. Not fear, not shame, just annoyance that he'd been caught. You don't understand what's at stake, he said slowly. No, you don't, I replied. We came here with a fist wrapped in silk. You tore the silk off and sold the cloth. Now I'm holding what's left, and I'm deciding whether to use it. You can't threaten a counselor, he said. I leaned in. I can do more than that. This isn't Earth jurisdiction. Out here there's only one law that matters. Who has the bigger gun? He sat in silence. Why? I asked finally. Why sell us out? He exhaled. Because you're going to start something we can't stop. You think this ends with Orenthus bending the knee? No. This ends with a 1,000-year war. One we can't win. One that burns Earth down to cinders. I gave them just enough intel to level the field. Not destroy us, just humble us. Humble? I whispered. You think humility was what our people felt when their bones melted under alien plasma? You don't understand the long game. I stood. You won't be around to see the end game. As I turned and walked toward the door, I gave a nod to Thorne, waiting just outside. She didn't ask questions. She didn't smile. She just walked in. He would never leave that room. And I'd sleep just fine. Back on the bridge, the mood had shifted. The stars were still quiet. The warships still watched the skies like hungry gods, but the galaxy wasn't sleeping anymore. Tarsus Junction, the Rimward Alliance, the Kalari clans, all of them were watching, waiting. We knew the Valari would strike back soon. It wasn't a matter of if, only when. And the second they did, we'd stop calling this retaliation. We'd start calling it conquest. But I wasn't afraid of their ships, their fleets, their numbers. What worried me was Earth. How long before the people back home started calling us too ruthless? How long before the bureaucrats started whispering about reparations and diplomatic healing? How long before another Rennick rose up and tried to sell our victories for hollow peace? Because the real war wasn't just fought with weapons. It was fought with willpower. And as long as I stood on the bridge of the Helix Prime, I would make sure that Earth never bent again. Not to aliens, Not to cowards, not to history. If they wanted to call us monsters, so be it. Better a monster with teeth than a slave with chains. The first explosion came just after midnight. Not in space. On Earth. I was still aboard the Helix Prime, orbiting above the husk of Arenthus, reviewing orbital defense data, when the alert came in. A direct transmission from a secure Earthcom line. Scrambled. High priority. No delay. I opened it. Detonation confirmed. Location: Geneva High Command. Casualties: unknown. Likely total. Transmission ends. For the first time in months, I sat perfectly still. Not because of shock, because I knew exactly what this meant. They hadn't just struck back. They'd done it on our soil, on the one place they knew would hurt the most, not militarily, but symbolically. Geneva was the face of Earth's diplomacy, our central government. The clean-shaven cowards in suits who smiled for alien cameras and signed off on every apology letter sent after a massacre. And now, they were dust. Hale rushed into the bridge, breath sharp. "Sir." "I saw it," I said flatly. He stopped, eyes wide. "Do we know who?" "Not yet, but I've got a list of suspects." He didn't ask for names. He already knew. The Volari were too proud to launch a terrorist attack. They liked to kill openly, with plasma and screaming fleets. If this had been their work, Geneva would have been vaporized by a ship, not a suitcase, which left the others, the Solari, silent and venomous, masters of shadows and subversion, the Rimward Alliance, desperate enough to destabilize anything that threatened their territory. Or someone from within. A human faction that believed I'd gone too far. That war should be fought politely. That peace was something you earned by offering your throat to the knife. There'd always been voices like that, weak ones, whispering in committees, crying for negotiations after every atrocity. Now one of them had finally picked up a bomb. Thorne appeared beside me on the screen, patching in from the intelligence division down deck. "We have footage," she said. "Show me." A security feed flickered to life, grainy, thermal filtered. A figure walked through a service corridor below Geneva's command tower. Short, unremarkable, civilian outfit, carrying a black case in one hand. No guards stopped him. No scanners blinked red. They let him in. He placed the case in a maintenance shaft, walked out. 3 minutes later, the core of Earth's political structure erupted into a fireball that cracked the clouds. No alien tech, no traceable frequency. Clean, professional, human. I stared at the screen, jaw set like steel. They want to split the planet. That's what this is. They want Earth divided before we unify under strength. Thorne nodded. And they're not done. We've intercepted chatter. Another planned strike. London. Target unknown. Shut it down. Our people are already en route. Good, because the next person to try that would find themselves airlocked without a last word. 3 hours later, I stood in the Helix's comms bay, staring into the camera that would beam my face into every hab dome, city tower, and colony on the Terran network. This wasn't a press conference. This was a reckoning. The tech signaled the feed was live. I didn't wait for an introduction. My name is Admiral Rylan Kane. You know who I am. I paused. We built this fleet not to conquer, but to survive. We raised these ships from the ashes of our dead. We trained our soldiers while our enemies sharpened their knives. They tried to erase us from the stars. We showed them why Earth doesn't die easy. A silence passed. I didn't blink. Tonight, someone brought war back to Earth. They struck Geneva, killed our own. Not with courage, not with honor, but with a coward's tool, a bomb in the shadows. Another pause. My voice dropped lower. There will be no mourning, no candlelight vigils, No hashtags. There will be answers. Then there will be consequences. This is your last warning. If you conspire against Earth's survival, if you sabotage the defense of our species, then you are not Terran. You are target, and with that, I cut the feed. Let the galaxy hear it, let Earth hear it louder. The fallout came fast. Half the colonies praised the message. Strong, clear, real. The other half panicked. The media elites back home called it militaristic, dangerous, even authoritarian. A few even accused me of staging the bombing as an excuse to consolidate power. They didn't realize something. I didn't care. This wasn't about public relations. It was about keeping the species alive. So when Earth's so-called Civil Oversight Council summoned me to answer for my actions, I didn't send an ambassador. I sent a video of Geneva burning, followed by a list of every military victory we'd scored since taking orbit over Arenthus, and a single line at the bottom. You're welcome. They didn't ask again. But while Earth argued, the stars stirred. At Tarsus Junction, the Volari Armada regrouped faster than we expected. Reports from our deep-range scouts painted a grim picture. They weren't just rebuilding. They were inviting allies, old enemies, forgotten empires, pirates, mercenary fleets, even a few species that had stayed neutral until now. The scent of blood had drawn them out like hyenas. They wanted their shot at Earth. And they thought this was the moment, when we were distracted, split between honor and politics, that they could end us. They were wrong. On the third day after Geneva, I met with my war council in the Helix's chamber. The mood was electric, not fear, not fatigue, rage, controlled, focused, like the seconds before a blade is drawn. Thorne laid out the Tarsus intel. Confirmed, multiple fleets. Estimated strength, 4 times our Arenthus deployment. We'll be outnumbered, Hale added. Outgunned. I nodded, then tapped the screen. A new formation glowed red. The Phalanx Protocol. They stared. You're serious? Thorne asked. Dead serious, I said. They want to outnumber us? Good. Let them choke on our steel. The Phalanx was never meant for show. It was humanity's doomsday formation, a coordinated full-fleet offensive designed to breach, collapse, and eradicate hostile systems in waves. No peace, no cleanup, just annihilation. It hadn't been used, ever, until now. Hale swallowed. If we deploy this, we're not sending a message anymore. No, I said, voice like cold iron. We're sending a curse. 2 days later, the Helix Prime jumped into the Tarsus system. They were waiting. Hundreds of ships, an ocean of alien hulls, curved and spiked, painted in blood red, bone white, and venomous green. Their signatures filled the void like a cancer, pulsing and ready, and we were small by comparison, only 70 Terran warships. But we weren't afraid, because size didn't matter anymore. What mattered was resolve, and ours was forged in the ashes of betrayal. I stood on the bridge as the countdown ticked, the moment the Phalanx would engage. Open comms, I said. Hale nodded. I stared into the camera, speaking to the assembled fleets of our enemies, speaking for Earth. You wanted war, now you have it. Come and die. War in space doesn't start with screaming. It starts with silence. A long, suffocating silence, the kind you feel deep in your gut, right before reality tears open and everything burns. That's what Tarsus Junction became. A waiting room for death. The enemy fleet sat in formation just beyond the asteroid belt, a tangled mass of ships from 20 systems, all united by one goal: end humanity's expansion. They thought we were scattered, demoralized. That Geneva's bombing would fracture our command structure, that we'd be too busy policing our own people to defend the stars. They were wrong. What stood between them and Earth wasn't a fleet. It was us. I stood on the command deck of the Helix Prime, eyes locked on the screen. Red icons painted the void, hundreds of them. Valerie dreadnoughts, Solari cloak ships, rimward skirmishers, Junker Merc vessels retrofitted with stolen tech. Hale stood to my right. He didn't speak, just watched. His jaw was clenched so tight I could hear his molars grinding. To my left, Thorne adjusted the combat formations, eyes flicking across holographic panels. Her voice was steady, sharp. All units report green across the board. Phalanx is locked. Forward squadrons await the order. I nodded. Begin. The Phalanx protocol wasn't designed for defense. It was designed for obliteration. Our ship split into 5 formations, knives in the dark, each formation anchored by a capital-class warship. The Helix Prime led Spear 1, tasked with punching directly through the center line of the enemy mass. We didn't have more ships. We had smarter ones. Every Terran vessel was rigged for coordinated aggression. Our AI-guided kinetic cannons fired in synced intervals. Our shields redistributed power based on damage proximity. Our fleet acted like a single, monstrous organism. They'd never seen anything like it. The first volley came from the Valeri. A wall of plasma bursts surged across the belt, lighting up the dark like a supernova. The impact radius was wide, meant to scatter us, to force a disorderly response. But we didn't move. We let them fire. We let them think it worked. Then our ECM crews activated. Thousands of decoy drones burst from our lead ships, each programmed with an artificial EM signature. The enemy's fire redirected, their targeting systems overloaded. Half their volley slammed into empty space. Then we hit back. Railgun slugs tore across the battlefield, each moving at Mach 20. The first connected with a rimward carrier, shattering its hull like cheap glass. Secondary explosions gutted its engine core. Another struck a Solari stealth frigate mid-maneuver. Its hull buckled inward, then vanished into a white-hot void. We didn't pick targets randomly. We hit supply ships first, then comms, then their ECM cores. By the time they realized it wasn't just brute force, it was surgical annihilation, half their coordination was gone. Still, they didn't run. They thought we wouldn't go all the way. They thought wrong. I switched to the internal squad feeds. Ground teams had already launched from Spear 3, orbital drop pods plunging toward enemy capital vessels. Boarding operations were underway. I caught a live feed from one squad leader, Lieutenant Rand, 27th Orbital Breach Division. A man who'd watched his sister burn alive in the colony strikes 5 years back. The galaxy had taken something from him. He was here to take it back. Inside the Valeri dreadnought, everything was chaos. Rand's squad moved like shadows, breaching corridors with silent charges, sweeping through biotech walls that oozed when they tore. Valeri warriors met them with bone rifles and high-pitched screeches. They didn't last long. Human Marines fought like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this moment. They didn't fight to win. They fought to punish. Rand took a blade to the leg, didn't flinch, shot the alien twice in the face, then dragged himself forward, blood pooling beneath him like oil. "This is for Delara, you alien bastard," he growled, planting charges on the dreadnought's internal reactor. 3 minutes later, the entire ship was consumed in an implosion, turning into a jagged piece of glowing wreckage drifting through the void. Back on the Helix, alarms blared. "Enemy reinforcements dropping from FTL," Hale said. "How many?" He hesitated. "Another fleet. Looks like Kalari heavies. No formation, no comms, just rage." The Kalari didn't believe in tactics, just firepower. 3 of our smaller corvettes went dark immediately. Plasma lances tore through their sides like tissue, their wreckage drifting past us in silence. I gritted my teeth. "Have Hammerline swing wide, encircle, force them inward." Hale relayed the order. The Hammerline, 6 Terran dreadnoughts retrofitted with Siege-class Mac cannons, swept in from the right flank. One by one they began pinning the Kalari into a kill box. That's when we dropped the Wraiths. Wraith-class stealth bombers, black triangles of death, slipped between debris fields and shattered hulls, releasing canister pods filled with tungsten rods and compressed EMP cores. They didn't announce their arrival. They just erased things. Kalari engines sputtered, blinked out. Weapon arrays froze. Shields dropped. And then the hammer line opened fire again. One by one, Kalari ships went dark. And we kept going. I wish I could say we didn't lose anyone, but this wasn't a clean war. The Storm Veil, the Atrium, Veritas 9, gone. Vaporized. Hundreds dead. But for every human ship lost, 7 enemy vessels went with it. Because we didn't fight for territory, we fought for existence. And that kind of war demands everything. 4 hours into the battle, the enemy line fractured. Their center collapsed first, Valari ships breaking formation, trying to retreat. Then the Solari cloaked and vanished, abandoning the others to die. Cowards. I didn't chase them, not yet. Instead, I opened a channel to the surviving fleets. No encryption, no passwords. Just this. Tarsus is gone. You're next. And I cut the feed. When the dust cleared, over 230 enemy ships had been destroyed. We lost 31. But the lesson cost a galaxy's worth of illusion. They thought humans were a warning. Now they knew we were a promise. After the battle, I walked alone through the upper hangar. Wreckage still being processed. Fighters charred from re-entry. Soldiers limping, bleeding, laughing through broken teeth. They saluted. I didn't ask for it, they gave it anyway, because for the first time in generations, we'd made them fear us, not because of numbers, not because of diplomacy. But because when they came to end us, we didn't break. We bit back, hard, and we were still hungry. They called it the Tarsus Massacre. We called it balance restored. News spread fast, faster than the wreckage cooled in orbit. Every system on the Orion branch had already seen the footage. Alien ships burning like shooting stars, Terran railguns roaring in synchronized fury, dreadnoughts ripped open and bleeding fire. The Valari high nest went silent. The Rimward Alliance fractured overnight. Half of them fled to the edge of known space. The other half sent desperate signals begging for neutrality agreements. The Kalari? They lost a third of their war fleet and half their political structure in a single strike. Their war-first doctrine died with the last cruiser that shattered under Helix Prime's kinetic barrage. We hadn't just won a battle. We'd upended the galactic order. But we weren't cheering, we were watching. Because when power shifts that violently, the rats don't die. They scatter. And the quiet that follows victory? It's never peace. It's plotting. Back aboard the Helix, the war room was dim, not out of malfunction, intention. Every screen was red-lit, a soft glow that made every scar on every face look deeper. Commander Hale stood by the star map, which now flickered less red than it had a week ago. The galaxy had learned. Fast. But Thorne wasn't satisfied. She never was. "They're reorganizing," she said coldly. "Not surrendering. The Solari cloaked half their navy. Our deep probes lost contact just past the Halvern Rift." "Going dark?" Hale asked. "Or preparing a counterstrike?" I stepped forward. "We destroyed 230 ships. No one rebounds from that in a week." Thorne met my eyes. "Unless they planned for this outcome." That shut the room up, because if she was right, then Tarsus wasn't the end of their overconfidence. It was the beginning of their calculated provocation. "Do we have any Solari prisoners left from the boarding teams?" I asked. Hale nodded. "One. Still breathing. Barely. Get what you can. Use whatever you need. I want to know what they're hiding." Thorne didn't blink. "Understood." She walked out. No salute, no smile, just the quiet understanding between soldiers who'd already crossed the line of morality too many times to pretend they hadn't. Later, I stood in the viewing bay. Tarsus floated beneath us, covered in fresh scars. I remembered when I was a boy, still training in the Terran Officer Academy. They showed us the old treaties, the history books, the video footage of human diplomats begging for seats at galactic tables while our people starved in off-world colonies. While our children grew up breathing recycled air in tin can habitats, far from Earth's soil, they told us to be humble, to earn respect, to wait our turn. And when we finally reached out to build something for ourselves, something independent, they vaporized it. I never forgot. So no, I didn't flinch at Tarsus. Not when the enemy fleets burned. Not when their admirals begged for terms. Not when I signed off on orbital bombardment to make sure they didn't walk away with hope. This wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, and Earth needed more of it. The Solari prisoner broke 12 hours later. They always do. He confirmed our fear. A second coalition was forming in the shadows. This time not for a direct assault, for sabotage. The galaxy had learned it couldn't beat us in open war, so they'd do what cowards do best: bleed us from the inside. 2 days later, a Terran mining convoy exploded in the Raelian drift. Not a war zone, not even contested space. 5 ships gone. No distress call. No survivors. The only thing they left behind was a single message broadcast across the debris field, repeated in a dozen alien dialects. No empire survives the fire it starts. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. The Solari had started whispering to the galaxy's cowards, promising them revenge, freedom, retribution, whatever would get a bomb in someone's hand. We had a name for it now: the Shadow Accord, a pact built on shared hatred, silent knives, covert assassinations, disinformation campaigns designed to splinter Earth from within. They weren't coming with fleets anymore. They were sending poison. On Earth, the cracks started to show. Not in the streets, in the boardrooms. Geneva's fall created a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. With the High Council gone, regional powers started posturing, each governor claiming more authority than they had. Civilian media twisted the footage of Tarsus into a fear campaign. Is Earth too powerful now? Are we creating monsters in the name of safety? Is Admiral Kane humanity's savior or its tyrant? I didn't respond. I let them talk, because their words didn't stop ships, and I didn't answer to popularity polls. I answered to survival, but not everyone felt that way. On the 4th night after Tarsus, I received a secure call from Echelon Red, an encrypted, hard-coded emergency protocol. It was coming from Earth's Mars command node. Only one man still had the clearance to use that channel: General Keir Danik, my old mentor, the man who taught me orbital combat before I ever stepped foot on a warship. He looked older, scarred. His voice was lower than I remembered. "You're building an empire," he said. I said nothing. "You think you're holding the galaxy together, but all you're doing is stacking bones. How long do you think it holds before it all collapses on us?" "You called for advice or a warning?" I asked. "A choice," he said. "Step back. Give the civilians time to reorganize. Let Earth handle its future. Or this path ends in civil war." I leaned in. Cold. "You taught me to never surrender. Now you want me to hand the wheel over to committee panels?" He sighed. "I taught you to protect the species. That includes protecting it from itself. Then you also know what happens if we flinch now." He stared at me for a long time. Finally, he said, "Just remember, power isn't the same thing as vision. Don't lose one chasing the other." Then the call ended. No threat, no order, just a man trying to remind me what the edge looks like before you fall off. I didn't sleep that night. I walked the helix's outer ring, where the bulkheads were still scorched from last month's firefight. I passed soldiers who nodded in silence, crew who looked at me not with fear, but reverence, not as a man, as a symbol. That was the problem. Symbols burn brightest right before they explode. So I made a decision. If the Shadow Accord wanted a war in the dark, we'd give it to them. But on our terms. 2 days later, Operation Black Veil was launched. No public announcement, no broadcast, just orders whispered into encrypted channels, relayed to off-the-books operatives across the outer colonies. Every major city in the Accord's suspected influence zones was mapped. Every financier, every smuggler, every sympathizer, and one by one, we erased them. Not with fleets, not with missiles, with ghosts. Humans trained to disappear, strike, vanish, no signatures, no footage, no warnings. By the end of the first week, 12 anti-Earth cells were gone. By the end of the second, 27. The Accord was unraveling, and the galaxy was starting to fear the quiet again. But war never stays in the shadows. And just as Earth regained control of its bleeding edges, the Volari resurfaced. They didn't send a fleet. They sent a message, broadcast across the entire galactic net, a video, fuzzy, recorded in darkness. A Terran Marine on his knees, throat torn open, eyes barely alive, forced to speak. "Your admiral sends ghosts, so we found one, and we sent him back." Then a scream, and the feed cut. Back on the helix, I watched the replay again and again, until the rage in my gut became cold, controlled. They thought we'd back down. They thought torture would buy them time. Instead, it bought them a deadline. I turned to Thorn and Hale. "One last warning," I said. "Then we end them." They should have killed him silently. That would have been smarter. That would have bought them time. Instead, the Volari made him scream into a live broadcast, broadcasted across every comm channel from the core systems to the rim. They made him beg with blood in his throat, made him speak my name as he choked on it. That was their mistake, because now it wasn't just war anymore. It was personal. I stared at the screen in the war chamber, the last frame of the feed still frozen. The Marine's name was Staff Sergeant Will Brenner. 29. 2 deployments, decorated, a combat engineer who'd volunteered for Black Veil after his brother was killed on Cinder Outpost. He was one of ours. Now he was an example, and I don't leave examples alive. Thorn walked in. She didn't ask if I'd seen the video. We both had. She handed me a datapad. Intercepted chatter. Solari freighter docked at the Valeri outpost 2 hours after the broadcast. Cloaked signature. Matching profile to known Accord handler. "Where?" I asked. "Gorith Station. Deep zone. Borderline lawless. Most of their fleet is gone, but the station's still live." "Population?" "About 6,000. Mostly neutral species. Smugglers, exiles, mercenary guilds." She paused. "Mixed human civilians, too. Some Terran-born." I didn't blink. "Prep the fleet. We're going in." She raised an eyebrow. "All of it?" "All of it." Hale spoke from behind me, voice low. "Sir, that's going to look like a genocide to the rest of the sector, especially if we crack open a station with civilians in it." I turned. "He was a civilian too, until you drag him into a cage and rip his throat out on camera. I'm just saying, the optics..." "Optics?" I cut him off, stepping forward. "I'm not here to win a public debate, Hale. I'm here to make sure they never do it again." Thorn didn't flinch. "Understood. Operation Final Echo launched at Soro 300 hours. The Helix Prime, Crucible, Fallout, Razor's Edge, and 17 escort vessels all dropped into the Gorith system at once, ripping through the silence like blades. No warning, no broadcast, no negotiation. Gorith Station was floating above a red dwarf, wrapped in old Valeri armor plating, half the modules mismatched and rusting. It had no orbital defense ring, no planetary fallback. They thought we wouldn't dare. They were wrong. I opened the comms link. My voice carried to the station, to every deck, every room. You harbored the men who murdered a Terran soldier on broadcast. You participated in a message of fear. So now you'll receive ours. No reply. I didn't expect one. So I sent the order. The Razor's Edge fired first. A single rail round punched through the outer docking ring, cracking it like an eggshell. Fires sparked, modules tore loose, spinning into space. Emergency shutters slammed shut, sealing oxygen leaks. Panic erupted on all channels. Civilians on board! You'll kill innocents! Medical bays hit! You're bombing hospitals! We have Terran civilians inside! I said nothing, because I remembered Brenner's face. And I knew exactly how long it had taken them to torture him. No one begged for mercy then. We didn't destroy the station. We broke it. Piece by piece. Laser cutters tore into the infrastructure. EMP pulses fried their AI cores. Boarding teams breached through maintenance shafts, moving from room to room like ghosts in black armor. No survivors were promised. Thorne led Strike Team Delta through the midsection. They found the Solari agent hiding behind 2 hybrid children and a human doctor. He begged. She didn't speak. 1 shot. Head gone. Children untouched. We weren't monsters. But we weren't forgiving either. 20 hours later, Gorath was dark. We didn't stay. We didn't loot. We left the wreckage behind, still floating, still visible, to remind the sector what silence breeds. And when the first news feed spun it into Terran aggression, I didn't bother to reply. Because something strange happened. Earth didn't flinch. Not the colonies, not the outer rings, not the frontier. They saw what we did. And for the first time since Geneva, there was no protest, just quiet agreement. The message had landed. You touch one of ours, we burn your station down. But even fire doesn't end the rot. 3 days after Gorath, the Shadow Accord struck again. Not with bombs, with lies. On Nexus Relay 9, the communication artery between Earth and the outer colonies, a forged signal was broadcast, mimicking a Terran fleet order to glass a human outpost. It caused panic in 7 colonies, riots in 2, and it worked. Not because anyone believed it, but because doubt is contagious, and once it spreads, it eats the foundations beneath your feet. I met with EarthGov's new provisional leader, Chancellor Arden, on Secure Channel. A woman who once fought in the Terran civil reunification wars and didn't flinch when I told her we needed access to internal data lines. You're asking for full oversight of Terran communications, she said. You're talking about a surveillance state. No, I replied. I'm talking about survival. She hesitated. But she didn't say no, because she understood what I was becoming. Not a war hero. Not a tactician, a firewall. I wasn't defending Earth with missiles anymore. I was defending it with control. Back aboard the Helix, Thorne pulled me aside. I've traced something, she said. Shadow Accord funding. 3 accounts, deep black, hidden through Terran corporations. Human-owned? I asked. She nodded once. One of them is tied to the former Earth Economic Stabilization Bureau, the same ones who authorized off-world mining licenses after Geneva fell. So it was true. The rot wasn't just out there. It was still in our blood. I issued Order 47. No trial, no press. Each name marked in red. Arrested, interrogated, gone. Some called it a purge. I called it housekeeping. By the time the month turned, we'd uncovered 6 more cells, 3 embedded in merchant fleets, 1 buried inside Earth's own logistics command, 2 inside the educational data system, planting ideology into colony school archives, all erased, clean. But the silence was changing. Even Thorne noticed it. It's too quiet, she said. They're not hitting us, Hale added. Not attacking, not speaking. They're gone. They weren't gone. They were retreating. And that terrified me more than 1,000 alien fleets. Because when an enemy like that pulls back, they're building something. I looked out the viewport again. Stars. Silent. Warships. Waiting. And I realized something. This war wouldn't end with battles. It wouldn't end with treaties. It would end when either Earth became something they feared too much to ever test again, or we burned out trying. And I already knew which one it would be. We weren't winning a war anymore. We were finishing it. The stars had gone quiet, not out of peace, but fear. The Volari fleets had withdrawn past the Dark Rim. The Shadow Accord went silent. No bombs, no lies, no assassinations. For weeks now, just static on our long-range scans and the slow, rhythmic breath of our ships as they patrolled the void. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't. It felt like the eye of the storm, and I was about to find out why. It started with a death. General Keir Danik, my old mentor, my only remaining equal, was found in his Mars command bunker, chest torn open by a plasma burn. No forced entry, no alarm tripped, no security feed recovered. Thorne handed me the report in silence. Her face was harder than I'd seen it in years. He was trying to access restricted data, she said. Shadow Accord comms. He knew something we didn't. What was he looking for? We don't know. We were lying to ourselves. We did know. He was trying to stop something, and someone stopped him first. By that point, I'd made too many enemies to be surprised. Earth was secure. The colonies obeyed. The enemies outside were shattered. But I'd forgotten the one rule every soldier learns too late. The closer you are to the crown, the sharper the knives. I initiated Protocol Vanta, a silent recall of our most loyal commanders to Helix Prime. 10 captains arrived. 2 didn't respond. 1 vanished mid-transit. The other sent a message, encrypted. 1 line. We were supposed to be protectors, not kings. The fool had defected. I sent a kill order to Thorne. She didn't hesitate. Hours later, the truth surfaced. Not from intel, not from interrogation, from Hale. He came to my quarters personally. No guards, no armor, just a data pad and a heavy look in his eyes. There's a coup building, he said. I stared at him. How long have you known? Long enough to hope it wouldn't happen? He placed the pad on the table. They call it Project Aegis. Earthborn officers, high command remnants, a few colonial governors. They're scared of what we've become. We? I said. You, he corrected. They think you'll take Earth from protection to permanent occupation. And are they wrong? I asked. He didn't answer, so I stepped forward. Everything we've built, every fleet, every sacrifice. You think I'd risk that by turning Earth into a throne? He looked me in the eye. No, but they do. He left the room that night, unsure if he'd live to see morning. I didn't kill him. Because Hale was right. Not about Project Aegis. They were cowards, dressing treason in the language of righteousness. He was right about the line I was standing on, and how damn easy it would be to cross it. Thorne was waiting when I returned to the war room. She had a question in her eyes. I gave her the answer. We end it, tonight. She nodded. No hesitation. She'd followed me through fire, through betrayal, through the edge of morality. She'd stand with me one last time, even if that edge gave way beneath our feet. Operation Sovereign Silence was launched 6 hours later, not against aliens, not against the Accord, against our own. The targets were precise. Civilian tech hubs linked to Aegis, data nodes buried in Earth's crust, hidden servers in the asteroid belt feeding misinformation to the colonies. We struck everything at once, no warning, no mercy. At Oro 3 Zors, Earth time. The sky lit up again. Explosions over Europa. Blackouts in Martian cities. Drones swarming Aegis bases before a single warning shot could be fired. In 23 minutes, Project Aegis was dead. Their leaders were captured. Their comm lines severed. Their ideology burned. And yet, one message got out. A single rogue ship, Resolute Dawn, escaped the strike zone. It jumped into deep space with an encrypted burst cast toward every known system. It held a single clip. Me, standing on the deck of the Helix, ordering Earth's own systems attacked, and a voiceover, twisted and bitter. This is what humanity has become. Judge for yourself. The galaxy exploded again. Not with fleets, not with armies, but with whispers. Is the Admiral becoming a tyrant? Is Earth eating itself alive? Is this the end of the Protector, or the birth of the Emperor? Suddenly I wasn't the sword anymore. I was the threat. And in that moment, I realized the truth. I couldn't lead Earth into the future, because I'd become the weapon they used to survive. Not the one they needed to rebuild. Thorne didn't like it. Hale outright opposed it. But I made the call. I called Chancellor Arden, told her she had full command authority, told her I was stepping down, told her Earth was hers again. She asked why. I said, because the galaxy knows my name now. Let them remember it like a curse, not a ruler. I didn't stay for the ceremony. There was no point. The Helix Prime undocked 3 days later, taking me with it. No destination, no orders, just distance. Let the galaxy sort through the ashes we left behind. Let them wonder if I was dead. Let them pray I stayed that way. A month later, deep in uncharted space, I stood alone in the command room. No crew, no fleet, just stars, just silence. I watched the light bend around the edge of a neutron star, and I thought of Will Brenner, of Geneva's fire, of Keir Danik's eyes as he tried to save me from myself, and I understood something I never had before. Victory doesn't mean survival. Survival is what comes after the last shot. It's the part no one teaches you to fight for, and it's the part I never learned. They'll tell stories about me. Some will call me a war hero. Some will call me a monster. But none of them will forget. And that's all I ever wanted. Because peace didn't save us. Fear did. And I made damn sure they never forgot why.